Welcome to Friday's devotions. Yesterday we were looking at Job 25 and this short message from Bildad, his final message to Job. And the next six chapters from chapter 26 on, what we have is a tremendous statement from Job. And some amazing truths will come out to be a mixture of great statements about God and also some of his own struggles that come through as well. But let's read a wee bit here. First of all, we read from chapter 26, verses beginning at verse 1. Then Job answered and said, How you have helped him who has no power, how you have saved the arm that has no strength, how you have counselled him who has no wisdom, and plentifully declared sound knowledge. With whose help have you uttered words, and whose breath has come out from you? In verse 11, the pillars of heaven tremble, and are astounded at his rebuke. By his power he stilled the sea. By his understanding he shattered Rahab. By the wind the heavens were made fair, and the hand pierced the fleeing serpent. Behold, these are but the outskirts of his ways, and how small a whisper do we hear of him. But the thunder of his power, who can understand? Chapter 27. And Job again took up his discourse and said, As God lives, who has taken away my right, and the Almighty, who has made my soul bitter? As long as my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils, my lips will not speak falsehood, and my tongue will not utter deceit. Far be it from me to say that you are right. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. I will hold fast my righteousness, and will not let it go. My heart does not reproach me for any of my days. Amen. Job responds to Bildad's tirade by, first of all, being sarcastic to him in verses 1 to 3 and basically saying, look, listen how little you have helped me and how poorly you have come to my aid. He then says in verse 4, he asks the question, really, whose breath has really come through you? Whose breath has entered you? In other words, where have your words come? He's saying to Bildad and his other friends. And the implication here is that what they have been saying has come from the evil one. The devil has used them as pawns and they've been unaware of it. Job then shows his heart as he speaks from verse 5 on about the greatness of the Lord, how it's revealed in God's knowledge of the place of the dead, verses 5 and 6, of God's control over the world in verses 7 to 11. This is a God of such power, of such greatness. And Job still believes that. He still holds on to that even in all he's going through. This is a God who deserves to be worshipped. This is a God who stops the storms he speaks about in verses 12 and to 13. This is a God who chases away the sea creatures. He speaks of a creature here called Rahab in verse 12. And then he speaks of a fleeing serpent in that verse 13. Rahab was believed to be a creature in mythology who fought against the Lord of the creation of the world. So this is a Lord that overcomes evil forces. And verse 14 at the end of chapter 26 is truly wonderful. He says, all these great deeds of God, he says, behold, these are but the outskirts of his ways, and how small a whisper do we hear of him. These great things that the Lord does, he says, it's only a tiny wee bit of what God can do. It's only a whisper. These amazing acts, it's only a little bit of what the Lord is enabled to reveal about himself. And he goes on, but the thunder of his power, who can understand? In all that God can do, it is far beyond what we can imagine. What we see is amazing what God can do, but it's only a little bit. This God is so great and so marvellous, he can do so much more. As we move into chapter 27, Job expresses a sense of God having taken away his rights and giving him a bitter soul. He speaks about in verse 2. Job says he's not speaking falsely, and he will not speak falsely. His friends are coming and said, admit that you're a sinner, admit that you have done evil things that have caused this suffering to me. And he says he can't do that. He can't give up his integrity. He will hold fast, he says in verse 6, to his claim of being righteous. He's not going to allow these friends to force him into saying something that he doesn't believe. And he's been put under tremendous pressure to accept a message about him being guilty, which he knows isn't the right way of things. And you know, that's so relevant for today. Christians face similar pressures to accept that we are wrong in so much of what we believe, whether it be about Christ, about salvation, whether it be about creation of this world, whether it be about human sexuality, about morality. We are told we're wrong, and we're told we're basically bad people for holding on these things, and we're told to accept that we're wrong in what we hold to. Let's learn from Job. Even in all that he suffered, he's not going to fail to tell what he believes is the truth. And we need such backbone as well. He goes on and he says that his enemies, those who oppose him, are basically like the wicked in verse 7. And he goes on in verses 8 to 23 in chapter 7 to speak about the future of the wicked and what they will suffer. He speaks of how they'll be cut off from God, verse 8. How they're people who don't delight in God, verse 10. How their families will suffer, verses 13 and 15. And what he works for, what the evil work for, will be things that will be swept away from verse 16 on. And Job is teaching that those who resist God's righteous people like him, they'll experience the same fate as the wicked. It reminds us it's so important that we treat the people of God with great integrity, with great care. Job's friends had been speaking arrogantly to him as if there be no consequences for their words. But here we see there will be retribution for all evil, including evil words that hurt God's people. One of the sad things is that Job's friends, who were saying these things that really hurt him, they failed to see that what they were doing was wrong. They even thought they were doing God's work. They were blind to their sin and to their feelings. And we need to be careful that we don't have a similar blind spot. And this devotion for us this morning, will you have the courage to say to the Lord, show me, Lord. Show me as I read your word. Show me as I listen to your word being preached. Show me things in my life which are not right. Show me the blind spots that I have towards sin. Because real blessing comes when we acknowledge our sinful ways. May God give us such grace. Amen.